Welcome to the Rich and Rob Show, everybody. I'm Rich. Please like and subscribe if you would. Thank you. What do we have today, Rob? An excerpt of Candace Owens on The Breakfast Club, which is a legit radio show and has millions of followers. Some dude who goes by Charlamagne the God is one of the 3 hosts. That's a bold and strange name. Oh, 100%. All right, let's hear Candace. This might be the first interview she gave since she left the Daily Wire, the show that's got Ben Shapiro and stuff.
Where did all of this begin for Candace Owens?
You know, I feel like I have just a very regular story. Like I said, like I was born in New York, raised in Stamford. There was nothing, particularly that stood out in my childhood that made me think that I was going to go into politics. I feel like I landed into politics kind of accidentally. Mm-hmm. And I say accidentally because I thought I was a liberal my whole life. I thought I was on the left my whole life and really didn't pay attention to politics in any meaningful way. And then, when Trump was running for office, I didn't want him to be elected. I was like this, not because I thought he was a racist or a sexist, but just because I thought it was crazy to go from Obama, who had a certain decorum about him, to suddenly this sort of brash New Yorker. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was weird when all of a sudden the people that liked Trump, everyone thought he was like this iconic symbol of business. He was in rap songs. Trump was a status, flipped on him in 1 second. I didn't buy the narrative that he was in the media for 3-4 decades, and suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a racist. So I just didn't trust the media's narrative about him, and so I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him in 2016, but I wanted to just listen to what he actually said. And then when I saw what he was saying versus how it was being reported, I just found it to be extremely dishonest. So I started researching more, learning more, and then I got kind of angry, like just with the lies, because I do think Black Americans are intentionally manipulated emotionally by the media. Indeed. And kind of kept dumb but emotional intentionally by the school system. And I started reading up on like Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, a bunch of Black scholars I originally had dismissed as Uncle Toms. And irony now is I get called an Uncle Tom all the time. So I got what was coming. But yeah, and then I realized that actually I've always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. And economically speaking, of course, the conservative arguments make the most sense.
Does that bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero.
Mm-hmm. She's right about that. Not only was Uncle Tom the hero, but Donald Trump was like a hero in the media, and then they made him out to be the worst guy ever. But she's bold for looking into it, I gotta say. Right. All right. Let's go longer.
But also because I get it. How can I fault people for something that I would have engaged in for the majority of my life? I thought the same thing about Black conservatives. Like I thought it was this betrayal, but I never actually understood it. It was just an emotional response. And I think that kind of is, if you come out of the public school system, I can't imagine how you could be a Black conservative when just the way that they even tell us our own history is just not true,
Do you think that that's true with most people though? Like, like when you think of a Trump or just anybody, you're fine with them, but then you learn like their politics, or you learn what they believe spiritually, and then you're like, you're turned off from it.
Yeah, and I don't even think it's necessarily the politics. I really do think the media plays the biggest part in it, because Trump, as far as I know, Trump's been, maybe he used to be a Democrat, but he's been a Republican and a conservative for a long time. We know he had to have been a conservative in terms of economics. Mm-hmm. He's wealthy, so you'd be hard pressed to find someone that's wealthy and advocating for Marxist beliefs. But yeah, I just feel like it's more about the media wants power. The media has a vested interest in things politically, and they like to make us think that we're having this open conversation and we're learning the truth about people. But these are just hatchet smear jobs, libeling people, and I think deluding a ton of people to turn against their own best interests.
So were you more anti-media as opposed to being pro-Trump?
Well, no, I actually, once I actually heard what he had to say, I was like, that's a pretty solid pitch. It was his Dimondale, Michigan speech particularly. He got up there and he just started listing all of the statistics in Black America in terms of poverty. These were just real statistics that he was talking about. And his pitch was basically like, you've been giving your vote to Democrats for 60 years. Why don't you just try something different? I think that's a pretty good elevator pitch. Like, hey, you've been doing the same thing for a long time. I'm not saying I'm amazing, but why don't we try something different and see if it gets better for you? And then suddenly I like flipped over to CNN and it was Don Lemon's like crying. I think it was, I'm maybe being, but it was just, they were so dramatic and they were lying about what he said. They're like, he looked you in the face and told you you were poor. Like, I'm like, that's not what he did at all. So I just got interested. I'm a very curious, interested person. If I get interested in something,
This is a
I will
very
just
good way to be.
take it all the way, read books. And I'm like, why are they doing this? Like, why are all the media companies that I believed my whole life just lying about it? Just say what he actually said and let Black Americans decide for themselves if that's a good enough pitch. They may have said no. I thought it was interesting, but the lying is something that I think is outrageous. It's gotten out of control.
Now, you said something earlier. You said that you wanted to listen to what Trump had to say. You said in 2016 you still didn't vote for him. So looking at the country now, right? Of course, there's Trump, there's Biden. Who do you think is better for our community? And why?
Obviously, well, first and foremost, just for everybody, you should have a president that's not mentally deteriorating like Biden is. I mean, he's in full mental deterioration. It's crazy to pretend anything else that's happening right now. It's scary first and foremost because we have real enemies out there, and you have a person that can't lead. He can't remember what he ate for breakfast. He's saying things. And the amount of times that he keeps talking about his dead son as if he's alive, it's very alarming. And I don't say that with any ill will in my heart either, because he's showing signs of when my grandfather, who passed a couple of years ago, started, his mind started diminishing, and you start to see those early signs of dementia. The way he walks, his gait, the way that he's falling, that this is crazy. Everyone should be outraged, whether you're on the left or the right. But in terms of the better candidate for Black Americans, I asked people the question, how were you living under Trump? The person that they told you was going to put us back into chains and we were all going to be slaves
ridiculous.
again. How was the economy under Trump, and how are you doing today? And every time you ask that question, everyone knows that they were living better under Trump because he was deregulating the environment, and people were just living better under Trump. And he is, in my opinion, a better president because at least he's telling you the truth and he's telling you what he actually thinks. One of the things that I hated the most about him when he first came down the escalator, I was like, oh, he's way too brash. Obama sounds way more polite. But I asked the question, do you want to be politely lied to or have somebody that's at least telling you what they think about you in no uncertain terms?
Rich.
So, I like Trump for a ton of reasons. And for me, it was always about the economic argument. And I knew that he was going to be a better candidate for Black Americans because of that, especially, build the wall sounded so wild, right? Back in 2016, it sounded wild. It sounded xenophobic. And I was saying, if these illegals get into the inner city communities, the first people that are going to be harmed are going to be Black Americans.
People actually were mad at you, right? When you got into the conversation with T.I. at the Revolt Music Conference, right? And you were saying that, and people didn't understand it, but it seems like people are understanding what you were trying to say back then.
Yeah, and I am so happy to have those moments, but you're right. I was talking a lot about legal immigration and saying this is something that we need to pay attention to, because eventually the Black vote's not going to matter. Something that they worked so hard for is not going to matter. They get enough illegals in. What are we at, 10 million under Biden?
Wrong.
And they're doing it intentionally. Like, it's going to be the same thing that they did to Black Americans in the 60s, what Lyndon Baines Johnson did when he established welfareism and the Great Society Act. They want to get these people in, offer them handouts, and turn them into economic slaves that will continue to vote for Democrats because they're getting free handouts. And it's incredibly racist, first and foremost, but because Black Americans are still, a lot of Black Americans, I should say, are still living under this deception that Lyndon Baines Johnson was a good president, even though he was an avowed racist.
Right.
I mean, he hated Black people. I mean, one of the, so many times, hard R referring to us as the N-word. I'll have those N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years. And this man is being hailed as a hero because he had to sign the Civil Rights Act, essentially with a figurative gun to his head because the country was on fire. JFK had just died, and there were riots in the streets protesting because of racism, and he did not want to sign it, but he did. And with the other hand, he signed the Great Society Act and incentivized welfareism and, programs to incentivize not marrying Black men. To think that we had government agents knocking on the door, going into the homes of Black women and being like, there better not be a man that lives here. We're just here to check to make sure. If you want this check, Dad can't be home.
Oh my
Every
God.
other ill that Black America is facing today is because we've removed fathers from the home. So I'm like a big, I use my platform to talk about men a lot and the need for male leadership, everything that is so harmful, this, Me Too, false feminism, all of this crap. It's anti-man, and it's anti-man for a reason, because a society cannot survive without strong men. A household cannot survive without strong men. We need strong men to lead homes. And so the fracturing of the Black family, I think, was the test. Like we were the mice in the experiment. Like, let's see how that goes. And now they're kind of doing that writ large. And I hate feminism so much. I can't even tell you, because what it's about is it's just an attack on men.
Wow, Rich. She said a lot, huh? Indeed she did. I'm still processing it all. The feminism thing I agree with. I mean, it just seems to be an attack on men, period. But I don't know what the politics of Charlamagne the God are or the other hosts, but they seem to be quite nice to her, not confrontational. Well, she's so smart. She comes prepared, too. So you're going to argue with her, you better be prepared. She'll come right back at you. She got no problem with that. I mean, one day she might even be president. She's got a lot going on there. She's got some appeal. Right, you never know. I mean, who thought Donald Trump would be president? But she's right. His policies speak for themselves. And that she looked into it, even though she'd been a lifelong Democrat, she looked at the other side of things and she saw a disconnect. That's honest. It might be scary, but it's honest. Yeah, I hear that. All right, people. We hope you enjoyed that. We'll be hearing more from Candace Owens, no question about it. So have a nice day. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rich and Rob Show. Cheers!